And a very good morning to you. We've got a show for you today. We're going to talk about Robbie Keane. We're going to hear from Sheahan O'Brien. Anthony Moyles is going to join us in studio to talk about the Director General's job at the GAA. But we're also going to be talking about our most important power rankings that we've ever done on the OTB AM show, because they're the first ones we've ever done. And already there's massive controversy about them.
Yeah, who would have thought it, that people getting subjective about the importance and the greatness of Gaelic football players would cause a little bit of a storm.
In an order, right. And we're also going to talk about Robbie Keane in a minute, because he's all over the back pages. But our power rankings from 10 to 1. At number 10, we've got Michael Murphy of Donegal. At number 9, it's Brian Fenton. 8, Paul Ganey. 7, Andy Moran. 6, Conor McManus. No dub so far. Oh, sorry, Brian Fenton. 5, Con O'Callaghan. 4, Jack McCaffrey. 3, Diarmuid Connolly. 2, Lee Keegan. And 1, James McCarthy, who, in my view, should have been Footballer of the Year. But I'm going to park that. I'm going to park the 2017 grievances for now.
It's a fair point saying that he should have been Footballer of the Year, because he probably is the best footballer in the country, but Footballer of the Year is the best footballer of 2017.
Decision. It's an emotional thing.
Yeah, kind of, but I think Andy Moran was kind of the player of the championship, wasn't he? So
yeah, I think it's that's
which isn't our list, you know.
No, it isn't our list. So just to establish some criteria for people who are like, oh, what's the story with this? What's not happening? It's everybody fit today picking your top 10 footballers. Whatever criteria you want to use, that's fine. If it's like, oh, I could build my entire team around this player, or if it's, oh, that's the most skillful player, or it's, oh, I like the cut of this guy's jib. That's what we're asking. That's the breadth and depth of the criteria.
Yeah, pretty much. It's very simple, very straightforward. A number of big debates in the office yesterday when people were coming up with these, and a number of debates will ensue as a result of this as well. I see a couple of suggestions on Twitter, and I'm like, yeah, actually, that player should have made the list. As in, certainly from my perspective, I'm like, actually, I wasn't biased enough towards Kerry at all. There should have been more.
You were pretty biased. You had 2 Kerry men and yours. David Moran is your number 10, and you had Paul Ganey at 5. 1, 2, 3,
well, wait to read out my personal preferences there. I didn't think that was part of the...
Peter Hart was 9, Conor McManus was 8, Diarmuid Connolly was 7, Cluxton was 6, Ganey was 5, Fenton was 4, Con O'Callaghan was 3, Lee Keegan was 2, and James McCarthy was 1.
Well, thanks for that, Ger. The one person that popped up on Twitter this morning, well, people referring to this person on Twitter, was Paul Murphy. He was very close to making my top 10, but I was like, am I being too biased towards Kerry by putting him in there? And I thought, yes, I am. So I didn't put him in, and then I bumped Moran down to 10.
I put Paul Ganey in, but only because I got pressure from you, and I want to.
I didn't put any pressure on anybody.
I want to take him out of my top 10 and stick Aidan O'Shea back in instead.
Why?
Because Aidan O'Shea should definitely be in the top 10.
Why should Paul Ganey be out of your top 10?
Well, because he's only made it because you're Kerry biased. Is it good to remind everybody else about something else about Eoin on the internet yesterday? Do we have some? Yeah. So Eoin, obviously, if you saw the show yesterday, or if you were in any way connected with our social media, you'll have been aware that he jumped on the Buffalo Bills bandwagon. It's one of the best career moves you've ever made, right? It was a brilliant decision.
You can keep talking here as long as I get rebuttal in a moment. Don't listen to what's about to happen here.
Be in the moment here. So here we are. Here's the Buffalo Bills Reddit. If you're unfamiliar with Reddit, it's the front page of the internet, and you go and you submit stuff and you upvote it. Irish Sports Show is getting behind the Bills bandwagon rolling in Ireland. Submitted by Owen Sheahan. You all have heard the phrase Google wank in the past, but this is the first time that we've seen somebody with whatever the synonym for that would be for Reddit.
Reddit wank. So just to give clarity to the situation right here, there was a work correspondence. Joseph, who works with us, said...
Oh, boring. You're boring everybody.
I'm not allowed to post this on Reddit. Can somebody else do it? I'm like... grand, I'll do it. But then I had to create an account to post something on Reddit because I've never used a website before. And I'm like, what username will I pick? How about my first name and my surname? And that happened to be the one. I subsequently deleted it when I realised my error. There was a screenshot taken in time. But instead of my name being up there with a YouTube link to Off the Ball, it now says Joe OTB, so they'll never guess what programme he works for.
You've just undone all your good work with the brilliant Buffalo Bills piece yesterday by that boring explainer.
I'd rather be boring than to be, as you call it, a Reddit whatever.
No, fair enough. All right, so what's coming up on today's page, on today's show? Indeed, the return of Robbie Keane. There's pictures of a 17-year-old Robbie Keane on the back of all the sports pages today. We'll tell you why in just a minute. Take you through everything else that's happening in the newspapers. We're going to react to the 2-2 draw. Hector Bellerin's screamer deep into injury time gave Arsenal a 2-2 draw, and they almost blew it even after that. Our top 10, we'll talk about that with Moylesy, top 10 Gaelic footballers, the Director General role, and also how the CPA are getting on. Moylesy, centrally involved in the Club Players Association. Going to hear from Sean O'Brien, who's talking again with Oisin Langan. Oisin, of course, was the person who did the interview in the first place, where he unleashed about Warren Gatland. So this is the first time I think they've met since then, and we'll get some reaction and analysis from the rest of the rugby from Alan Quinlan. So I guess we'll talk about Robbie Keane first, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the news today that Wolves are interested in him. He's going to be called back from India. He's going to return to his boyhood club, this time his real boyhood club, you'd suspect. The club that gave him that big break where he got sold to Coventry for, what was it, about £4 or £5 million at the time?
5.5, I think.
5.5. It'd be a huge move for him, I think, because suddenly he's probably going to escalate his way back up to the Premier League via default. Now, Wolves' top 2 scorers this season are also on loan from other clubs, so they don't exactly have a permanent striker who's banging the goals for them this season that have allowed him to open up that 12-point gap at the top of the Championship. Now, I don't know how long it's been since there's been a 12-point gap at the top of the Championship. Perhaps actually when Newcastle went back up, it probably existed. But it's a very rare thing. This is an excellent Wolves team. This is almost Premier League standard that Robbie Keane is getting welcomed back into if this story turns out to be true. So it's a really huge story, because I don't think there was any Premier League club realistically interested in Robbie Keane or even going to touch him.
This makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. They're 12 points clear. Why would you be bringing back somebody who is playing in India at this point? From their perspective, from Robbie Keane's perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. It's like, go home, have one last tour of the battlefield, wave to the Wolves fans and say, this was a brilliant experience. It was like very important, a seminal moment in my life when you stuck me in the first team as a precocious, brilliant 17-year-old and I scored loads of goals.
Is there a chance that the current Robbie Keane is better than the one we saw in the MLS? Like we've seen, like even just via social media, how hard he's been working in the gym to try and get himself back to that level. I haven't watched any Indian Super League, Ger, so I don't...
I saw the goal.
Yeah.
I saw the header.
And what does that tell you about?
I don't think the standard of the league is very high.
Okay, so you've seen one goal from Robbie Keane. I think there's a chance that he's better than he was in the MLS. I think he may have recalibrated his body in a different way, that he's now able to sustain half a season in the Championship.
I mean, if you were talking about any other sport where somebody suddenly gets better at 37 than they were at 32,
I just think Robbie Keane came to the realisation that his skill may be able to take him through another 2 or 3 years at the end of his career if he works a little bit harder in the gym, if he manages to get that absolutely bang on and put in an unbelievable effort right at the end of his career, because he's obviously not going to lose the skill.
The end of his career was like 3 years ago.
Well, that's the thing. So I think he was in that kind of career wind-down mode. He goes to America and it's like, right, okay, if I was in Robbie Keane's position, I would be the same. I'm like, I'm going to enjoy these last few years. I don't have to put in the work in the gym that I did when I was at the very top level, and I'm just going to enjoy my football. I'm just going to let my skills do the talking. And then he probably thought, actually, you know what? I'm a little bit more competitive than this. I actually kind of want a little bit of the bite of the cherry of top level football again. He obviously wanted that. There was talks about coming back to Premier League, or it was Championship, wasn't it, actually, at the time during last summer.
The only realistic team who were mentioned.
Yeah, actually, that was the case. So I think there was a bit of that, and Robbie Keane was like, right, I've got one last chance to do this. Like, he's ancient, but I don't think it's as ridiculous as you think.
Makes no sense for Wolves, I don't think. I mean, from Robbie Keane's perspective, obviously he wants to play football. It's much closer to home than India, fair enough. But no. Not having it. We were watching the 4-4 draw, the Chelsea Spurs game from March 2008. It was on Sky Sports this morning at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and it was an unbelievable game. I'd completely forgotten that at 4-4, Robbie Keane puts a dinky little pass, a little perfect slide rule in the box, straight through to Dimitar Berbatov, who is through one-on-one with Carlo Cudicini, and in that moment, this 4-4 draw, which you kind of isn't really that widely remembered in terms of the all-time great Premier League games. Like, it's talked about, but it's not like the 4-3 Liverpool-Newcastle game. If he scores that, all of a sudden, it's the greatest game of all time. Because Joe Cole is sensational. Dimitar Berbatov is absolutely sensational. Robbie Keane scores the goal that he says, I think, has quoted as being the best goal that he ever scored in the Premier League. The ball comes off the back of Carvalho, and Robbie's kind of running one way, and all of a sudden just arcs back and pings it into the top far corner, and Cudicini has that perfect dive where he nearly gets it to make it look absolutely beautiful. So
it's an amazing goal, but at the same time there is something comical about the fact that it just bumps off Carvalho's back and Alex is running across Robbie Keane. It's not exactly the most fearsome centre-back partnership Chelsea have ever had.
Carvalho's brilliant.
He was, but in 2008 he wasn't as brilliant as he was.
Fair enough. All right. Always with the Oh, the darkness on. Let's go and take you through the newspapers. I'll get you some comments quickly. Chrissy McCaig has to be in the top 5. Chrissy McCaig from Derry. Paddy McBrearty, bit of a curveball. Paddy McBrearty wasn't that much of a curveball. He's on a lot of people's top 10s. Gary Brennan, says Pete Farrell.
Considered him for sure, yeah.
How long before young Clifford from Kerry owns this list, says an envious Corkman, Donncha Murphy. Morris Fitz reborn. I did definitely think about sticking him in at number 10. And in fairness, if I was going to stick any Kerry player on, it should have been him.
Why?
Because if I'm picking a team today...
He's not better than Paul Geaney.
I think... Well, how do you know?
Because he's just not. He is.
How do you know?
He's 18 years old.
Well, he might be.
He might be
Leo
in the
Messi,
future.
when he was 18, was better than most footballers in the world.
Yeah, but...
This guy could be Leo Messi standard.
David Clifford, there's a high possibility he will be better than Paul Geaney.
I think there's a possibility
currently,
he is now.
I don't think so. I disagree.
Well, hang on, you're all over Conor Callahan being the best hurler in the country.
Conor Callahan's older than David Clifford by about 2 or 3 years.
But the evidence, right, that's 1 season of playing club hurling, 2 seasons of playing club hurling. I'm just saying that the evidence that we have... that
Senior club hurling.
I think by the end of the league, you'll be like, well, about that Geaney being better than Clifford. By the end of the league, I'm willing to bet you'll have changed your mind.
But like you're making it out as if Paul Geaney is some sort of average forward here. Paul Geaney is one of the best forwards in the country.
How did he do in the 2 games against in the finals?
Somebody was saying
Nathan said he went missing.
Yeah, that's what Nathan was saying, which I completely disagree with. To be honest, I think that was a largely ridiculous point, particularly in the first game.
Dermot Connolly is the best footballer in the country, says David Johnson. McManus definitely top 3. Conor McManus should be higher. Pound for pound, you don't have Kerry's Paul Murphy. FFS, lads.
That's a fair point.
Where would you pick him? Yeah.
He's a very it is a really tough one to leave out Michael Murphy and Conor McManus for Paul Murphy. It is he had an unbelievable season, and in terms of consistency, pound for pound, putting it in.
Tommy's whining in the background there. I can't actually. All I can is you can't leave McManus out. He's saying.
Yeah, you really can't. That's what I came to.
So the big problem is it would be amazing to be able to create the conditions to see Conor McManus playing for Dublin. And what he would do with the supply of ball and now the other thing is that maybe he doesn't get picked for Dublin because he's kicking Hollywood points from the left wing and the right wing, and they're like, now hang on a second, we've managed to hone the system to the point where you only kick points from when you're completely free in front of the goals.
Maybe that's it, and it'd be interesting to reverse that and put Paul Mannion in the Monaghan team, and if Paul Mannion's allowed to kick Monaghan or Hollywood points rather, same thing, then what's he like?
It could be amazing.
It can be if we had a transfer market to do a little trade there between Paul Mannion and Conor McManus.
Mannion will be way up that list by the time next season's over.
Yeah, his stock is rising high already. If you did have to pick one inside forward for Dublin, it probably would have been him. But
Dublin are odds on. I was checking the odds. Dublin are odds on to win the All Ireland next year. So if you were to pick a Footballer of the Year candidate or 3, who would you be picking?
You still got to go with James McCarthy, don't you? After his All Ireland performance, he's going nowhere.
His odds are going to be very short.
Okay, so we're talking about betting sensibly and giving yourself a little bit of a shot.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, pick a winner.
Yeah, James McCarthy for me.
James McCarthy, Connolly and Paul Mannion, I think, are the 3 that you'd be picking. Because I think Connolly's odds will go out a little bit this year.
What about Conor Callahan?
I mean, it's your money. You can bet however you want. Let's bring it to the newspapers.
Yeah, let's start with the Irish Examiner, and it's Saved by the Bell. It reads at the front there. That is, of course, Hector Bellerin, his last gap equaliser, rescuing Gunners in a Derby Classic. It is the lead in a lot of papers today. The Irish Times as well, in their sports section this morning, also going with that goal by Hector Bellerin. Thibaut Courtois grasping desperately at that ball as he sees it sailing past him for that incredible draw last night at the Emirates Stadium. While the Herald are also going with Arsenal-Chelsea on the back of their newspaper this morning. Gunners fire back Blues, reads the headline there. Wenger left fuming at farcical penalty in Emirates stalemate. We'll be chatting about that in just a moment. Wenger going full paranoia at the full-time whistle there, his full-time interview with
He might be right, though.
He could be right.
He might be right.
He could be right. I personally think he's onto something, but the level of paranoia there is just overboard at this point. And Saved by the Bell reads the back of the Irish Daily Sun, but Penn riles Wenger. I think Wenger is going to be popping up in a lot of places over the next couple of days. He says he's going to appeal his ban that's pending ferociously.
Loads of big stories on the back of the Star this morning. They got the Robbie Keane story. Golden oldie. Wolves want a Robbie reunion at Molyneux. That's him pictured as a pasty-faced 17-year-old. The Wenger story is there as well. Two very similar and pretty horrific stories that paint football and football fans in a really dark light. Jake Fury at Baby Taunts. This is Jake Livermore entered the fans area after apparently being taunted about the death of his child. I don't know if you remember the story about Jake Livermore, who tested positive for cocaine and ultimately was banned, but got off the ban because he'd gone on what the papers described as a bender following the death of his child. Steve Bruce stood by him, and he's recovered, obviously, his career from that and moved on. But obviously, you never really recover from the loss of a child. And here he is playing football, coming off, and going over to the bench, and ends up getting taunted by some football fan in inverted commas. And so we'll wait and see exactly what happens. But the other story, also pretty horrific. Falkirk fans have been widely condemned after Dean Shields was taunted for having lost an eye. So Dean Shields was suffered an injury as a child and then had surgery to remove his eye, I think in 2006, and has gone on to have a career in professional football, plays for Northern Ireland. He's Kenny Shields' son, the Derry City manager, and Falkirk and Dunfermline are rivals. There's about half an hour between them. And there was a massive row at the end of a game in November when two of the Falkirk players were given massive bans. One of them was banned for 8 games for taunting Shields about his lost eye. And then the fans this time brought a lot of fake eyeballs and threw them onto the field when he came on this time. So football fans not exactly covering themselves in glory in England or in Scotland with these two stories. Now, before all the football fans out there jump on us for pointing it out, it's true, it happened, these are facts.
Yeah, it's pretty grim. I think we're going to move on to the Irish Independent as well. They're going at Wolves as well, I think.
Yeah, so Keane set for sensational Wolves return for run-in. I mean, I'm sceptical. Colour me sceptic about this one. It won't be until after March, by which point the league will have been wrapped up. Is it like they're retiring his jersey, Wolves? Is that what it is? I think that's what this is, a PR thing from the Wolves owners. Discipline not an issue in our Munster squad, and Sis Van Gran. And what is the point of this midwinter madness? Martin Brownie is mad as hell and he's not going to take it anymore.
A couple of stories about Spurs. We'll start with the Irish Daily Mail. And Kane cashes in, reads the headline on the back of that paper this morning. Spurs striker to be top paid English star. He's set to earn up to 200 grand a week. That's what Spurs want to offer them to keep their striker. He's currently on 110,000 a week. This is all in pounds sterling, by the way. So they're going to obviously break their mould of not playing players more than whatever it is, clearly £110,000 a week. And also on the back of the Racing Post, they're talking about tonight's game. It's live and off the ball and News Talk. Spurs hot on the heels of rivals. Tottenham to press top 4 claims with Hammers win. It's Spurs versus West Ham and it kicks off at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, Nathan and Kenny on commentary duty for that one. So the Times Ireland edition, historic vote set to approve video referees. This is the video system referees, possibly in time for the Football World Cup. And also that Johan van Graan saying that discipline is not an issue for them. And then finally is shameful West Brom. This is the Mirror. Shameful West Brom demand FA investigation after confirming that Livermore was abused over death of his baby son. Player will be cleared, but Burley rages, how low will some of these cretins stoop over football idiots? Which is a fair point. Kind of, I think everybody should revisit their whole notion of fandom if you use it as some kind of excuse to hurl that level of abuse at another human being.
And then just finally then in the UK back pages, they're going with the same picture in The Guardian and The Telegraph. It is Hector Bellerin. Hero Hector reads the front page of The Guardian Sport, and Bellerin to the rescue is the headline on the front of The Telegraph Sport. Okay,
so we've got some talking points from the newspapers that we just want to bring your way right now. It's a relatively interesting day in terms of some of the other stories that are going on. The Robbie Keane to Wolves story, I think we've pretty much covered that at this point. Are we going to have video assistant referees in Russia? I mean, they haven't quite got the technology sorted out. It's not quite fast enough yet for a seamless viewing experience.
Well, apparently that's not the case. Just reading Ziegler's story today in The Times, the time thing hasn't actually been that much of an issue. It hasn't caused major delays. And I think, obviously, we're going to see it in next Monday's games at Brighton Crystal Palace in the FA Cup, where it's introduced. And there's a very fair point that Ziegler makes, is that what if something goes wrong next week? It's a one-game sample size. So if there is a bit of a delay, if there is a controversial decision to be made, it's a one-game sample size. That it is unfair to be judging anything based on one game.
We're going to talk about Arsenal in a moment, right? But just so, I don't know if everybody saw the game last night. A lot of people probably haven't seen the penalty incident from the Arsenal-Chelsea game. Did you think it was a penalty?
I didn't think so, but that's the problem. It is down to opinion. And they had Dermot Gallagher on Sky Sports last night saying it was a penalty.
Well,
I disagree.
Graham Powell is parroting the exact same line. Chelsea's penalty given for a foul on Eden Hazard by Hector Bellerin was the right call. It was a clumsy tackle. I don't even think there's contact made.
Like, he kicks the bottom of his foot, I think. So he does kick him, and that's the argument that, you know, it is clumsy, but clumsy doesn't always mean it's a foul.
No.
So I think that, and also contact doesn't always mean it's a foul either.
No, and so you get the video system referee coming on, and we're all sitting at home watching the World Cup going, ooh, the World Cup is about to be decided by some dude who's going to give a penalty or disallow a goal.
Yeah, it's incredible. It does completely throw it into question about that, because like, this isn't an anomaly. Tons of these decisions are subjective. Match of the Day spent half their programme every Saturday debating whether or not it was a penalty.
The NFL season has largely been brilliant, ruined by injuries to key players, and the other thing it's been ruined by is the complete, no one understands what the catch rule is, right? And they have 32 cameras, and so you've got 32 camera angles, and they send any contentious decisions back to head office in New York, where they have the head of refereeing, officiating they call it, watching every incident. And still there have been countless episodes where the wrong decision was made. This is like the most expensive, best run league in the world, with the best facilities going, I don't know if I like, because you super slow-mo it down. It's like, okay, I need to watch it in real time, can't make any decision on that. I think actually I'm largely in favour of technology, but it should be like a chip in the ball to make sure that it's gone over the line, or invisible offsides, but that's about it. Yeah,
you're probably right. Like, I do think there are cases where it will come into huge use, as in, as you said, the obvious things, and there are obvious penalties as well. But there's even more of them. Like, even with the Kieran Gibbs incident with Callum Chambers the other day, there's an argument to be made that is kind of a penalty because it does make contact with the hand. I think that's far less of a penalty than it was last night, though. I think that was a joke of a decision. But at the same time, if somebody sat here and was like, but it touches the arm, I'm like, okay, let's get into the law book. How far away do you have to be? How deliberate does it have to be? Yeah. And it does have the potential to be a mess. But I just think the problem is, if you're going to trial it, do it like you're doing in mainland Europe. Do it across a whole rake of fixtures. Whereas there's going to be so much scrutiny on next Monday night. You want to talk a bit about Greg LeMond and Chris Froome? Yeah, it's carried in the Times as well today. I think if we go to page 49 or thereabouts this morning, there's a couple of good quotes there from LeMond. You want me to do that, do you? It's like, well, yeah. Basically, or if you want to hand over the newspaper to me there, I can call a few of them out just while I have them handy right there. So, Froome's excuse for drugs ridiculous, claims tour legend, reads the headline on Jeremy Whittle's piece. So there's a couple of different elements to this. LeMond, I think, has been largely silent on the Froome situation until this morning. He says, I don't believe in Dave Brailsford. He's secretive, he skirts around questions, and from what I read and hear, the team is not as scientific and as knowledgeable as they claim to be. Shock news there from Greg LeMond. And Froome, he says, may argue that the level of salbutamol found in a urine sample during La Vuelta last year was caused by a rapid succession of puffs to prevent coughing during post-race TV interviews. Give me a break, LeMond said. That is the most ridiculous excuse I've ever heard. If this is what he claims, then it's simple. He broke the rules and should be punished accordingly. And then the other thing he talks about is tramadol and the use of that painkiller as unconscionable, as he says. And the fallacy that salbutamol does not improve performance is only true if you use it as prescribed. If taken orally or by injection, it acts as an anabolic steroid similar to clenbuterol, the drug that Alberto Contador was positive for. So strong words by Greg LeMond there, as you'd kind of expect. I don't think he's been slow in holding back to Team Sky or anything like that. He is the kind of... He says he's suspicious of Brailsford. Yeah, very suspicious. He seems to be the social justice warrior of the cycling world, Greg LeMond, and I think he very much enjoys that title, for sure. We don't know how much credence we should give to LeMond in terms of being that social justice warrior, as I say, but certainly it's strong stuff. I am pretty. I believe in Greg LeMond. Well, if you believe him, good for you. I kind of do as well, but at the same time, it has been like, here's an incident that's happened in cycling. I'm Greg LeMond, and I'm going to come down hard on it. But to be fair, we do need voices like this. There aren't enough. I mean, is that not exactly what we're looking for? It is true. Is that not exactly what we ask all our sports people to be? If something crappy happens, call it out. Yeah, kind of. I'd suppose so. It just is like he's completely on his own here, isn't he? Maybe that's a reason to even love him even a little bit more, because he's kind of the black sheep here when all his former colleagues in the peloton aren't exactly speaking out. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. If you want to get in touch with us, you can get us here at Off the Ball on Twitter, or you can always get us with the comments on the bottom of the Facebook post that you're watching this on, or of course we're live on offtheball.com on an audio only stream as well, and you can get us too on Twitter. Now, a couple of quick comments for you. Gainey versus Clifford. Just ask yourself, how would Gainey have done in the minor championship last year? Probably very well.
Well, I mean, he would have got banned for like 2 years for being overage, Francis. But thanks for the tweet.
Very good point there from Francis.
I mean, let's just wait and see. Let's just wait and see.
Exactly. Well, that's you can't say that, because the longer you wait, the better David Clifford will get, and the more that will suit your arguments.
But I'm saying today, right, for the 20...
Wait and see will not prove today.
I would still pick him over. I would pick him over.
So you're going on the record and saying, as of the 4th of January 2018, David Clifford is a better football player than Paul Kenny.
I'm saying I'm picking him in my top 10 ahead of him. So
you're saying that. That's incredible stuff right there.
All right, let's move on. We've got some Pat Gilroy goodness here for you. So Oisin Langan was out doing his duty at the Borden and Mona Walsh Cup, I think, to give it its full title. And he caught up with the Dublin hurling manager, Pat Gilroy, after a thumping win for the Dubs against Meath.
We're here with Dublin hurling manager Pat Gilroy. Pat, what were you looking for in tonight's win against Meath, and did you find it?
We were looking for a lot of effort from them, and I suppose to bring some of the work that we had been doing to the pitch. You know, it's well and good training, but you can't be playing games. So there's a lot of things that we got from them today.
You've had the lads for maybe a month or in or around that at this stage. Has it been a matter of physically testing them, challenging them, seeing who wants to be a Dublin hurler? Is that what it's about at this stage of the year and this stage of the season?
All of these fellas really want to be Dublin hurlers and play to their best. You know, their commitment and effort, they couldn't fault anything so far with any of them. Anything we've asked of them, they've done. So we'd be very happy with their commitment and their attitude. It's been top class. You know, there's a nice blend and there's a nice mix in there, and fellas who have come back that weren't there for the last couple of years, their attitude has been great. And you know, it's early in the season, but we'd be happy with what we've seen so far. I think people in general, and myself included, would say that maybe the team didn't achieve what it could achieve over the last number of years, and things didn't go their way. They were very unlucky a number of times. So you know, there's a hunger there to get back to having success.
All right, we're talking GAA. Anthony Moyles is here. How are you?
I'm good, Jer, and yourself?
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, and to you.
Yeah, you like the cat that got the cream there?
Oh, well, I wouldn't say that, Jer.
We were talking fantasy NFL there. Moyles just won our league and took all the... Well, it's obviously we only play for pride.
Of course.
Just in case the taxman's watching.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'll be declaring everything anyway, Joe.
Right, let's move on quickly. We've caused a bit of controversy this morning with our top 10 GAA players, top 10 Gaelic footballers rather. The hurlers are still to come. And I'd like to distance myself from this because I had Aidan O'Shea in my top 10 and he didn't even make the cut.
Okay, there, man.
Here's our 10. Well, I mean, a lot of us didn't have any bias. Nathan Murphy, on the other hand, Owen Sheahan had a bit of bias.
Not really.
There were a few others around the office. Darren Cleary, I think, might have had 9 Dubs on his team. I may have slandered him somewhat. So I should take you through this, all right, just in case you're just listening to this. James McCarthy's number 1, Lee Keegan's number 2, Diarmuid Connolly's number 3, Jack McCaffrey's 4, Conor Callahan rounds out the top 5, 4 Dubs in the top 5. Conor McManus is 6, Andy Moran is 7, Paul Ganey is 8, Brian Fenton is 9, and Michael Murphy is 10. What do you think, Mara?
First question, it's not going on level of importance or anything, it's just a random 1 to 10, is it?
Yeah, as in...
I just have to get the parameters.
Oh, no, number 1 is the best footballer in the country. Who you think is the best footballer in the country?
Exactly, so Dean Rock is lessened a little bit, obviously his importance. If we're going on importance, then himself and Stephen Cluxton are probably in the top 10 there. So we're going on pure
skill.
Power ranking, pound for pound.
Well, I had
skill,
Cluxton in my top 10.
Well, so did I, in fairness. But I think Dean Rock, that was a question that a lot of people in the office had yesterday.
Yeah.
Does their importance to the team, their importance to the cause, is that a factor? Not really.
Okay.
Who would you pick?
Because that changed it. Well, I would have had Cluxton in.
Right.
I just think
in the top 10, definitely, or
absolutely, 100%.
Who's your number 1?
Cluxton's close with it.
Right.
Like if I was sitting down to pick a team, you know, if I'm Jim Gavin, I think when Cluxton retires, I retire. Because I think it just changes the whole dynamic of that team massively. And I think anyone who, you know, I'm not saying this, but like anyone who ever matches up against him, be it in the last number of years or over his career, would say that he is the major cog in that wheel. Of course you need, but he's the, you know, people have said the quarterback and everything else.
Yeah.
Like that is his importance. And I just think his skill levels, what he has done, kicking the winning point, all that kind of stuff, like he's ice cool. Like, I mean, a keeper is meant to shot stop. I think that's a given nowadays, but I still don't feel the teams are focusing enough, especially the second-tier teams, on their actual goalkeeper and their kick-out ability.
Because it's supposed to be a copycat thing in Gaelic football where, you know, Donegal do their thing and then everybody copies that. But actually it isn't really, and if it was, teams would be investing so much more in finding their Cluxton or...
Absolutely.
Because it's not that his skills are innate. They're clearly, like, he's learned how to kick the ball to specific points.
Yes.
And he's worked really hard at it. It's not like he was born the best goalkeeper of all time.
I remember playing against him very, very early, where, you know, the usual way was you just put down the ball and you kick it as far as you can and as high as you can, you know, this kind of way. And I was at 6 marking Shane Ryan. And I remember we looked at it, I think it was 07. But Shane Ryan went for a kick out. He started to move, and we were ready for this, and I started to move with him. But he ran so far. I think he was nearly back at his own 21 by the time he got the ball. Now, I stupidly followed him, and I was taken out of 6. But it was the first time I ever saw even a kick out of that nature. You know, Cluxton just pinged it out to his kind of right-hand side, and he ran, he just caught it on his chest. And I never could get to him. You know, even though I knew what was going on. And he's done that so many countless times. And you're right, it's not that it's anything out of the ordinary. Like, if I had, you know, these development squads, I'd be getting a kid of saying, right, you have to just work on your left and right foot. You have to be able to stand right directly behind the ball so no one knows where it's going. And as you run up, you're able to just alter to your left or your right.
How much does it matter that the Paul Flynns of the world have also been in those kicking sessions and made those runs and learns how to arc, and so that he starts when the run-up starts from Cluxton and he doesn't even need to be watching sometimes, and so so it's a team thing.
It is a team thing, and I've watched, and I chatted to a couple of number of the Meath lads before, and I even know myself where you try to stop the run. But you know, if I stop Flynn's run, fine. But then 3 or 4 other runs have been made, and Cluxton has that ability where he's still able to say, no, that's the number 1 ball that goes. You know, because he even as he runs up, if you watch him, like, he doesn't just, as I say, it's not just, you know, head down. He's constantly viewing the pitch. You know. Yeah. So I think he's definitely should be in there. I think. One guy I think who I think gets, and he didn't get an All-Star this year, is McLaughlin from Mayo. Like, I just think he is unbelievable. Like, you look at a player who is small in stature, but every time he gets the ball, he takes it on. He takes players on. He goes through tackles. He goes through 1 or 2 players. He gets other teams go out to stop him, to slow him down, and the only way you're going to do that is physically, you know, try to dominate him. He has developed, you know, a couple of years ago people were saying that he was kind of in the backs and he was playing the sweeper role, and you know, he was still very, very good at it, but now he's added so much to it. He's getting scores, he's up the far end of the field, and I think a major factor of them losing the All-Ireland last year was him going off.
So is there a case for Ryan McHugh by the same token?
You know, I suppose if you're looking at a topical type of thing, I think McHugh is excellent, absolutely, and I think he has got that. I just think McLaughlin has a little bit extra. I think McHugh will develop into that. Yeah. You know, he's obviously a bit younger.
Ryan McHugh was controversially number 1 by one of the Donegal lads outside in this list. So this list isn't perfect, right? Sometimes benevolent dictatorship is called for.
Yeah, would you put Murphy in now? Like, I'm going to throw a controversial one in and say about Connolly. Like, I think Connolly absolutely, as regards skill and what he can do with the ball, but I think it's overemphasized now. You know, he does something in a Vincent's game and it's all over, you know, social media. Yeah. You know, lots of fellas can do that. Okay, Murphy can do it. There's a guy called Matty Donnelly, like in Tyrone, I think is an unbelievable player. You know, massive leader. Yeah. You know, he's a guy who's driving that team on. And even when you look at the last year, Colin Kavanagh had an unbelievable year. Yeah. You know, so the Connolly thing, I just think that, you know, if we were sitting down and picking a team, we're saying, okay, like, Connolly definitely wouldn't be the first man on my sheet because he's an X-factor player. You know, so if I'm looking to try and beat the opposition, I have my Cluxtons, I have my McLaughlins. I know fellas who have 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100, they're going to give me everything. And Connolly just, if he's in the mood, if he's not in the mood. I
think Connolly suffers because he had a really bad year. The thing that we remember most about 2017 was Chrissy McCaig. That happened. Then there's the push against Carlow. And then there's a really good second half in the All-Ireland final. But that's it. That's the full body of evidence that we most recently have. So he probably suffers a bit of recency bias where
he does.
He's somebody who clearly, if this year is a year that he plays every game, will be in the running for Footballer of the Year. Yeah. Like, definitely. But because he isn't right now at the moment, I can understand why you wouldn't.
Yeah, and I think he has to, like, one of his main focuses obviously for next year is try to work on that a bit, you know, obviously keeping his head and keeping his cool, because there's no point having all of this talent and not being able to display it. Like, he hasn't got, I don't know, what age is he now?
31, 30, 31?
Is he? 30, I think, on the button, isn't he?
So, like, I mean, he hasn't got that long left. Like, he's a supreme athlete. He's in serious shape. He probably could go on, and but he's the type of player who could just someday say, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
The one thing, when you look at this list and you look at all the different nominations, some people are a little bit more revealing with their nominations than others. And it seems to be in the limelight these days, to be known as one of the greatest Gaelic footballers around, is to be a half-back or a half-forward.
Yeah, it seems that, but I'm gonna I was kind of thinking about it, and I was picking loads of defenders. I was saying I have to get off this because it has become that. But you know, when you even look like the likes of, say, I don't know, a Johnny Cooper or someone like that, or, you know, McMahon, they get up and get scores, but the half forward or half backs has become the primary role, the driving role. Whereas the midfield used to always be the driving role now. Your half back line is where it's at. And your half forward line has essentially become the old half back line. Like, they're the guys who protect, and your half back line are the guys who actually get up the field and get the scores and support the front men, you know, because everything, I suppose, is in front of them. They're able to go, they're able to pick their moments to go. But Keegan, you know, fellas like that, absolutely, you know, they're in there. They should be in there. I think, you know, I wouldn't have Con O'Callaghan in there yet.
Right. Me neither, but no. Everybody else did.
He's supreme talent, has won pretty much nearly everything this year.
Apparently he'd make the top 10 list of hurlers in the country, but
not he probably would. But I think against the big boys, I still think he's yet to prove it. Now, there's a guy, Chrissy McCaig, who you've mentioned, you know, and again, there's probably a bit of, but he is a guy who has unbelievable, like, as a defender and as a leader, and a guy who just takes everything on his own shoulders. And
clearly suffers because the inter-county team aren't very good at the minute.
Correct, yeah, but has done everything that he has done with Shlottneil, but has you know, is a fella who could get, if he got a run, could be become a serious player.
Just one very last point of that. Just Con O'Callaghan not doing it against the big teams. Do you not look at the Tyrone game? Do you not look at the goal against Mayo? Of course, that performance kind of faded out a little bit. Mayo were like, right, we need to watch this guy for the rest of the game now. He's already killed us. Yeah. But to me, that seems like doing it against the big boys.
Yeah, it is. But is it doing it in the context of, say, and I know we have Jack McCaffrey in there, but say even like McCarthy, okay?
Like his All-Ireland performance, for example.
Like where it's just constant, you know, and he's constantly there at you, you know. Like, there is a thing, you have to break it down into bits, you know, and if I was marking O'Callaghan that day, you say, okay, he's absolutely skint me here, I just have to lock this down now, which kind of happened, you know, whereas McCarthy is constantly there. McCaffrey, for a lot of spells this year, was that guy who was just killing teams. And again, his injury, you know, really deprived us of seeing an unbelievable, because he was on for a great day, I think, that day. Like, he's just, like, I really hope he gets back. And again, would you put him in because of the fact that the injury is there?
Yeah, we kind of said, from McCaffrey's perspective, you stick him in right now, because today, if everybody was fit, who are the top 10 footballers in the country? This time in the summer, you know, he'll fade off this list, and at the start of next year, he'll be gone totally, and then hopefully he'll play a couple of games and get straight back in. Yeah.
Well, that's the hope, because it's again, I think he's playing with a kind of an abandon, you know, that he looked to me like he was a guy who was actually really enjoying football again last year.
The year had done the world of good.
Yeah.
So who's your number one?
Can we look at the list again?
We can stick our list up again. So I should say that this list is like the votes tallied of 10 off the ball team members. James McCarthy finished number 1. Michael Murphy finished 10.
Yeah, like, I mean, McCarthy, I think Cluxon has to be very, very very close to the top of the list. You know, I just think for what he gives that team. And I know, you know, you're talking about overall. So McCarthy probably, yes, I could see that. I think Fenton has to be higher. Like, I probably wouldn't have Connolly, as I said, and McCaffrey and O'Callaghan, so I definitely wouldn't have 5 dubs in there. Andy Moran and what he's done. McManus has been an unbelievable leader. Like, I mean, you take McManus out of Monaghan,
they're nothing.
You take 80% of the scores.
Aidan O'Shea in the top 10?
No. Just probably outside it. I think he still has to, and I know people will label this, but I still think he has to, you know, probably at crunch moments, he really just has to try to carry that team. You know, there was probably spells in that All-Ireland where you just wanted a little bit more from him. Yeah. To really stand out, you know. I kind of brushed over the McLaughlin thing, but I think McLaughlin has to be in there, because I think he's just, like, I looked at his performances this year and he did everything.
He's not number 1, is he?
And he's not number one, no.
You haven't given us a number one yet. You've been sitting on that fence for a long time.
I know I have. I would put Cluxton number one.
Okay, right.
I think he is, like, I mean, and I know people will say, but that is the importance. Like, if you think, okay, and you go to, say, basketball parlance or something like that, the amount of restarts, he is control of the most restarts across any players.
And the most important ones as well.
Correct.
Like, even if
scores, vital scores, like, momentum changing scores. He knows what he has to do. Yeah. And we've all seen it over the last number of years when you have a goalkeeper and all of a sudden it goes the other way.
But I think the first kick out against Tyrone actually killed Tyrone. It was like, okay, what have you got, Dublin? Oh, balls, you've got that.
Yeah.
It was like, and it was literally, you could see the air coming out of them. Oh, Jesus.
You could actually, because I think I was doing the game for News Talk, and they were pressed up so much, and they were kind of going, yeah, we have this. Yeah. We've done a mountain of work in this, and then it was like, oh, that's where you're going to put it.
Yeah, we didn't know you could do that. Yeah. Right, we've got to move on because there's two other things that we wanted to talk to you about, and they might be interrelated. It's the decision time really for the GAA in terms of the next Director General, and one of the things that's going to be very important for them is the role that the club game plays within the organisation and how the GAA decides to embrace the club scene and really actually make it the centrepiece of the whole organisation, that it's a community-based volunteer thing, or the next Director General comes in and goes, well, we're sitting on this massive gold mine here, lads, why don't we just take the money? And it's possible that you can try and ride both horses, and I think that that's kind of what Pádraig Duffy has done a little bit of, and I would argue quite successfully. I know most GAA people are thinking, no, I can't be having that. So where's your stand on all this, and what do you think the importance of that role is next?
I think the importance is enormous. I think it's the importance of it. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think you have to basically divide out a number of roles underneath his main, role himself and what he's trying to do, and even embrace the inter-county game and the club game. I think they both have to be obviously embraced, because you either go down the road. I don't agree with this mantra of, we should all get back to, going in with our boots in our hand and sweeping the floors, and, it's all volunteer. Like, I mean, the GAA is moving on, okay, and it's going corporate, and it has been corporate for the last number of years. As soon as you put corporate boxes into Croke Park, that's the way it was going. And money is there, and everything around it is there. So it's following the road of rugby and of soccer and everything else, and it is a big sport here. Will it ever get to massive proportions? No, it won't, because of the population. But for the amount of money that's in it, there's a lot of people now trying to get their piece from it. And that has to be managed as much as anything. And what can't be forgotten about then is the club game. Because of the success, or some people would say, well, it's not that successful, but because of maybe the juggernaut that is the inter-county game and everything around it. So the club game is most definitely, I think the focus really has to be of trying to actually link the two, okay? Or else you just say, well, we're just going to jettison one, and we're just going to leave the club game over here under a separate body, and it can just look after itself, and we're going to become even more elite, and we're going to have the inter-county scene as an elitist kind of area, and we'll just deal with it that way.
That kind of is what we have at the minute, though, isn't it? Well, we do have the elitist and then the club. So the efforts to kind of try and restore the club to some element of centre stage are underway, with the notion of here's a month in April, and immediately it's being attacked by the inter-county managers who are saying it's just not workable. And in some ways, I have some sympathy with them.
You would have sympathy with them if they were all starting in January. Right, that's my thing. So if we were sitting down and we're managing Kildare, and you say, Ger, I think we should get them back in October. And I said, well, geez, that's a great idea. We'll try to get away with that, which we do, right? Yeah. So we have them October, November, December. We put a good kind of 3 months into them. Then we have them January, February, March. That's nearly 6 months of work over a pre-season and a league season, pre-championship. Now, how I think that I just can't see the argument that people can say, well, actually, you can go back for 3 to 4 weeks. It's not even 4 full weeks. You could go back for 2 or 3 weeks of that April to play some club games, and then come into May and have the rest of your championship. Like, if you can't say that you haven't done a body of work on how you're going to play, the players that you're going to play, the opposition, if all of a sudden you're standing there in April and going, oh, who are we playing? Oh, right, okay, let's do the work now for the championship. That's a ridiculous argument. And injuries are going to happen no matter what. And more than likely, you're probably going to have 15 to 20 guys who are playing most of those league games, and another 15 or 20 lads who are sitting on the bench, who aren't getting games, who are training like dogs, who probably feel they're low in confidence, and who would actually like to get back to the club. And like, people were kind of saying, why are the CPA pushing for April? Why don't you just leave it till kind of August or September? I particularly wouldn't fancy starting the year. Like, if I was training a team now in January and you're saying, right lads, first round of the club team, saying first round of the championship is first week in September.
Yeah.
You'd say, oh, was it?
See you later.
Good luck. I won't not training in January. And you certainly wouldn't get lads. Lads might decide to train in April or May, and then lads would go to America. And it would become really. So the club scene would just be squashed really tightly into a kind of 10 to 12 week, maybe even less, of a window. And I think it would just take away from it.
Ultimately, I think it kind of comes back to the point of not looking at things from a top-down perspective, that essentially we're fixing parts here and there because there is no master plan. And the one thing with the April window for clubs is that that's a very different proposition for a Kerry or a Dublin or a Mayo than it is for, say, one of the lesser counties and Leinster, because May is an unbelievably important time in their season as opposed to somebody from Kerry, because they're expected to get to July to August, and suddenly they're straight back out of April and you're playing for Wicklow, and suddenly you're facing a game and it's a 50-50 game, and you don't know if that's going to be your first game in the Leinster Championship and it could be your last game in the Leinster Championship playing for your county. So until there's some sort of parity in terms of the amount of games or a structure in the championship, then April is still going to be it's not going to be fair.
No, like, and I think the kind of, which often happens with these arguments, is the red herring is everyone's focusing on the April thing. I think you have to step back from this. And the top down, like the first thing is, we're nearly actually a year to CPA, right? And the first thing we said was we need to master an overall fixture plan to incorporate everything in here. There's no point doing the Super 8 and then, as it happened, oh geez, we forgot about the hurling, and we have to do a special hurling congress. Like, have a look at the whole thing. So you don't have a situation like that. So if you do make April a little bit free, well, then you don't necessarily have to have fellas out in May. Maybe push it to the back end of May, or do something else. But like let's have a look at everything. Because what will happen is, essentially, if you do not look after the club player, and I'm seeing it already, fellas will say, well, listen, they'll never get to that inter-county scene, so it won't matter who Wicklow are playing in May, because they'll have a second or third string team anyway, because the best players will go, I'm not playing for that. Like, I mean, if I was sitting there now, and there's lots of inter-county teams who have started training in November, and you're being asked to come in November, December, January, February, all the way through the year, there's countless, I could tell you from me, there's a number of fellas who have decided, this isn't for me.
It's too tough.
Yeah, it's just not for me. I've other things to do in my life. You know, I've got college, I've got this, I've got that, I've got whatever it is, and they're just saying no, thank you. And I suppose, you know, you look at reward versus opportunity, and you say what you put in, and work versus reward. So if I'm sitting there starting and I say, no, I'm willing to do this because I'm willing, I know I could get on the panel and then hopefully make the team. Then you say, okay, what am I going to do that for? One game in Leinster, and then I'm gone and I'm into a back door and maybe I get a bit of a run. Like, there has to be, I still believe the structure has to be taken apart, be it the provincials or whatever way you want to do it. And I know people say, oh, but that's the way it's been. But like, if it's going to remain the same, it'll remain the same. And the game will essentially fold in itself, and you will end up with, I believe, 8 teams. You'll have the Super 8, and there'll be 8 teams who are regularly there, and eventually all those guys will do, the Dublins, the Kerrys, as you just said, they'll put their hand up and say, listen, we're providing all of the revenue for this association.
Yeah.
The other 20, what is it? I haven't got my calculator, 24, aren't giving us anything. So we want part of that. And then you're even going to go even more elite.
Well, then the players will be like, we're creating all the revenue, we want more of it.
Correct.
And that's how that works.
And eventually then it will go to
so that's the pathway we're on.
Go to professional status. So you have,
can anything stop it?
That has to be stopped. Well, it has to be stopped. Like, I mean, I honestly believe if people, you know, who are in the powers and the corridors of power, and you know, we went to CCCC pre-Christmas and they said, oh, you have to go to democratic route. So we did, and we brought out motions, and we've got some motions going to Congress. Don't think they'll see the light of day, to be honest with you. But what we wanted to do was test the actual procedure and see was it fit for purpose. And as per usual, there's been certain things going on where certain, you know, this motion was left under the desk type thing, and certain stuff hasn't got through, right? But we expected that. But I think a lot of people are afraid of change, and they're afraid of there's a fear of change, but this thing has to change. There's a lot of change happening, you know, in the kind of corporate area, and this is happening in that area. But if you really stand back from it, a lot of it is happening only for a certain amount of people and a certain amount of counties, and the rest are just being jettisoned. They're just floating away.
So the Director General's job is to stop that.
100%, and the President, the Director General has to see that, and direction comes from the top. You spoke about April. Like, if I was managing a company and I said, okay, guys, I want everyone to take, you know, whatever, lunch between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, but listen, I'm not really going to, you know, you can take it really whenever you want. If I was to say, well, actually, I might do it at 12 or half 12. Like, the thing of April is, if you're going to do it, and say, right, there's ramifications for this. And not, you know, you lose a home venue in the league. Like, you have to make it that it's...
We're finding you 100 grand.
Correct. And the county board say, right, Joe Bloggs, you're the manager of the new team. I know you want to make an impression. I know you're under pressure. But by the way, we're already started training back in October, which is only going to increase expense anyway on the county. So we're going to keep that free because we definitely don't want to be fined €100,000. Yeah. Or whatever it is.
Would you apply for the gig? Would you, like, go through that process at all? Because, like, even if you do, then, I mean, I suspect they won't give you the job, right? And,
thanks, Jerry.
Just to, like, you know,
I didn't know you saw my CV.
I don't want to puff you up here, but, like, I just think that, you know, but, like, what happens in 5 years' time is that, so Pat Gilroy's radical proposals for, like, the players belonging to the clubs and then being released to the inter-county system, that eventually filters into the public domain, and it becomes how the discourse is shaped. Yeah. And so, I don't know, I mean, maybe... But
but unfortunately, that's the GAA answer, isn't it? Like, I mean, it has always been that way. You know, someone comes up with something and they say, oh, that won't... No, we're never doing that. And then someone else goes, well, actually, that probably was. And eventually it just...
There's a variation of that now over here that I've got a little twist on.
Exactly. And it comes back in. Yeah. Because it's actually, when you boil it down, it's not that hard. You know, like, I mean, there's only a certain amount of weekends in the year. There's only a certain amount of weeks in the year. We know the amount of teams. So, like, it wouldn't actually be that hard. If you ask someone else to come in from, you know, KPMG over in the UK and said, listen, we've 32 counties, this is what we would like you to sort of...
Nice even number.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too outlandish to think that there might be somebody who's in charge of an international conglomerate who's not Irish to come in and take over this thing. The one thing, though, is you do have to have some level of Irish. That isn't a job spec.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Like, you look at the likes of Scott Pelly taking over the European tour, and you're like, that was an interesting appointment. What he's doing is actually quite interesting, and you're thinking, God, the GAA are very interested in spreading their wings abroad. It's not the most outlandish thing to think, potentially not this Director General, but the next one could be somebody outside of Ireland who's got international sports marketing.
Oh, no. It's got to be a true guy.
Yeah, well, I'd say they'll definitely be checking the passport on it.
That's between the GAA President and the Director General job. Well, at least with the DG job, it's like, bottom line, get us the results. Whereas with the President, it's kind of like the true Gael sort of notion.
I can see Joe Bradley's article in the Sunday Independent already. But the thing that they need to really look at is, and it's something that they're trying to grow the game in Asia, they're trying to grow the game and, you know, all these, everywhere outside of Ireland. That's great, absolutely fine, no problem with that. But yet, the club game, which is the feeder into the inter-county game, and, you know, we can talk about whether Wicklow play or Meath are out and how, you know, impacting them in April would really affect them. I tell you what's impacting them more is the fact that club players are actually going, this isn't for me. Like, I see the fallout. The fallout is unbelievable. And guys who are athletes at 16 or 17, you know it. Most kids who are athletes that could throw their hand at anything, rugby, soccer, Gaelic, and they're being poached away, and they're kind of saying, is Gaelic really for me? Sure, I talk to my brother. I see the hassle what they have. You know, I see the stuff with fixtures and everything else. No thanks.
Anthony, good stuff. We've got to leave it there. We'll let you go and get some work done. We're going to talk rugby right after this.
Sean O'Brien of Leinster, Ireland and the Lions. At the moment, I guess, trying to shake off a bit of a niggle, a bit of an injury. You might talk to us about the nature of that and what it is and what the prospect of return is and when.
Yeah, it's just a bit of hip tightness at the minute, so it kind of came on me there the last few weeks, and something I've been trying to manage. So cracked into rehab, and it's improved a good bit. So probably hasn't improved enough this week to be available for selection, but hopefully next week. So
it's something that you kind of have to manage, I guess, when you're at this stage of your career and heading into your early 30s. Is that something you're okay with, knowing that some weeks you just might not be able to train as hard as others. Some games you won't be able to play in. Like, I know you'd love to play against Ulster, but the body is saying, look, you need a rest because there's bigger challenges to come.
Yeah, well, it's not really the body saying it. It's just you pick up these bits and pieces, and you know, I'm used to managing injuries now, so at this stage, so it's not very different for me, or there's nothing new there for me. I know how to deal with them, and you know, I know not to rush back or to push something to try and play, which I've done probably in the past before. You know, when you're younger, you're an eager beaver, but you realise that you have to get things right first before you get back on the field. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Is that the hardest thing as a player, to not rush back, to not try and hide something from the physio, to try and get out on the pitch? Because as a player, all you want to do is play, which is absolutely and completely understandable.
Yeah, sometimes. You know, in fairness to the medical staff at Leinster, you know, they're brilliant, and they manage it pretty well too, and make sure that you are right coming back. You know, you have to be open and honest about these things, and there's no point in going out there half cocked. So you know, it's important that everyone is as fit, because we have a big squad, we've quality players, and if you're at 50%, you know, there's someone else out there that's at 100, so that can do your job.
I imagine there's a great level of trust with Leo and Stuart and the staff as well, John Fogarty, Gervin Dempsey, Guy Easterby, that you can say, you know what, I'm not 100% this week, or maybe there's just something I need to rest, and you can rest, and they know you're not trying to DOS it. In fact, if anything, you're actually trying to save yourself for the big games, or save yourself for the right time to play. The big games is probably the wrong phrase to use.
Yeah, of course. You know, they're in contact with the S&C staff and the medical department the whole time. So yeah, they trust us to make sure that we're giving them honest feedback, and they'll look after us as best as possible.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years back, I think you were on Off the Ball with Brian O'Driscoll, one of our hosts, and he was talking about minding himself and all that, and it's a term that maybe sports people maybe don't like to use, but it is something that has to be done. Is it a matter now that you're kind of looking and going, okay, I'm going to pitch up for the Champions Cup, or I'm going to try and peak for those Champions Cup games and then Ireland, or can it work like that?
No, it's not about minding. It's not about minding yourself. It's minding your body off the field, and making sure that you're doing your work and you're doing your rehab, and you know, you're making sure that you're fit every week. So I wouldn't class it as minding yourself. You know what I mean? When you play, you don't mind yourself. It's after you play, then you try and get yourself back in a good place to go again the following week. So you get smart with things like that, and you understand your body a lot better.
Is that the hardest thing, to mind yourself off the park? Because we've seen it recently, and it was the Ireland forwards coach, whose name has slipped my mind now, basically said Cian Healy changed his diet, he changed a lot of things that he does off the park, and look at him now, he's absolutely flying. Is that something that you've had to continue to evolve? Change your diet, look at your diet, look at doing, like, you know, yoga, Pilates, the whole lot?
Yeah, there's certain things that you bring into your training plan, and your nutrition side of things is obviously massive too, but I think I'm pretty on top of that side of things in terms of my nutrition and my lifestyle now. You know, in previous years, you know, I've said this before, that there was probably bits and pieces that I wasn't looking after myself well enough on. But it is, I suppose you evolve as a player, and as you get older, you get more experience, and again, you get to know your body better and better as the years go on. So it is a big part of it now.
And how do you feel then when you're watching the game against Connacht and you're seeing Van der Fleer and Levy flying and Max Deacon coming in flying? Does it kind of up the ante for you? Does it fire a shot across the bows, or how does it work?
It doesn't really. You know, I'd expect that from those lads. They're all competitive. They're all class players. They've all proved it time and time again. So, you know, Max is probably a bit younger and you know, is getting a bit more game time. But the other two lads are performing week in, week out, any opportunity to get. So it's no surprise to any of us. And that's what you want in the squad. You want competition. You want lads fighting for their places. You want quality players that are able to do that week in, week out.
And how does it work then in training when you say that they're teammates, but they're also competition? You want to play with each other, but you also want to kind of stand out to get picked. So how does it work when you're training together and working together and playing together? Yeah,
it was a competitive environment, so that's what I mean by you want that competitiveness at training, and there is that edge there at training, but at the same time there's a massive respect between players and people alike. There's no one going around training trying to kill each other as such, but it's a competitive environment and you want standards to be high, so everyone is trying to push that and everyone's trying to drive that.
Yeah. A couple of big games coming up in the Champions Cup. Obviously there's the game against Ulster in the Pro 14 as well. You're in a very good place. You've set yourselves up well for the rest of the season.
Yeah, we've done well over the last number of weeks. Put ourselves in some good positions. But the next 3 or 4 weeks of this block is highly important to the rest of the year. So it's an exciting time for us. It's something that everyone is looking forward to. It's something that the squad is looking forward to, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But we're building nicely, and we've done a lot of hard work and put ourselves in a good place.
Did you take something more than match wins out of those matches against Exeter, if you follow my lead there? I mean, the way those games were won maybe gives you a boost, maybe sends the right message, just kind of gives you the confidence to know, okay, maybe we're in with a shout at this Champions Cup.
Yeah, well, you take it week by week, but I definitely think we took a step in the right direction with those 2 games, with how tough and physical they were, and how we came back the second day, and played in the second half. So it probably give a lot of the younger guys a lot of confidence going forward in the competition, knowing that we grind it out when we need to. So it's a good thing. There's a lot of positives to take from those 2 games. You know, we backed up what we said we were going to do during the week, which was a good thing.
Lots of big hits in those games, lots of big hits in every game. It's something we've been talking about a lot on Off the Ball over the last couple of weeks. Maybe contact should be lower so you can avoid concussions and more serious injury. That would also create a bit more offloading. It would create a different game, maybe a more open game. How would you feel about that as a player?
To be honest with you, I haven't thought about it. It's... I don't know if those people would be saying the same stuff if they're still playing the game. You know, it's very difficult to try and put a rule on going lower, and you know what I mean. It's an abrasive physical sport we're playing. So you look at years ago, there wasn't probably a word said about any of this. Now, yeah, it's a bit different, all right, but you do have to take in player welfare and safety into it. But that's what the referee is there for. So players should know at this stage that the head or neck area is a no-go, and should adapt.
Is it worth examining those? No harm in looking, surely.
It's not for me to decide.
But it's not something you feel needs immediately to be addressed. And I appreciate I'm just throwing this out there.
I don't think it does have to be immediately addressed. I think it's something that just players have to be more aware of. I think around the laws of the game, and once we understand that, and you go about in a disciplined and good manner, it'll reduce a lot of those I suppose headshots that people have taken over the past while.
And finally, last time we had a chat was in Tullow Rugby Club, and you were very honest about your Lions experience. There's been a lot of debate since. Warren has had his say. I know you two have chatted. Have you? Is there any regrets about how it happened or what was said, or
no.
How do you feel about it now, having chatted to Warren and having got your feelings out?
I don't feel anything about it now. It's done with, and it's a thing of the past now. And I've said what I said, and I spoke to all the coaches, and I'm leaving it there.
Yeah. It's good though that it's out there now and it can be talked about, and the learnings can be taken for the next Lions tour, whether you're on it or someone else is on it. And
maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Okay. And just before we let you go, we're here for Lifestyle Sports. I suppose a supporters' experience.
Yep.
Leinster would be nothing without their supporters. The support is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. You look at the Connacht game, for instance, place was sold out again. I never had so many phone calls for tickets, so it's great. It's a great initiative by Lifestyle, and it's obviously great that the supporters get something back as well, and that's what we're trying to do for them as well, week in, week out. So supporting Leinster is unbelievable as always.
You're looking forward to all those calls for tickets at the Six Nations time?
We'll see.
Cheers, Sean.
All right. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. That's Sean O'Brien there with Oisin Langan. Of course, it was Oisin's interview with Sean O'Brien that was the one that went all around the world. Right, so Sean O'Brien was helping to launch Lifestyle Sports' latest fan competition. If you're at the next 4 upcoming Leinster home games and you're wearing the latest Leinster jersey, just post a selfie on Instagram with the tag at Lifestyle Sports Rugby to be in with a chance of winning a gift card. That's all thanks to Lifestyle Sports, official retail partner of Leinster Rugby. Good stuff.
Absolutely. It was kind of like, and I'm sorry, Sean. But by the way, actually, do you want to speak a little bit more about the chat we had?
Give me something else here. No. I'm done.
I think when history looks back on Tullow Rugby Club, that will go down as the most infamous moment.
They're Towns Cup champions.
There is that.
There's some stuff that we meant to talk about a little bit earlier on. Mick O'Dwyer is one of them. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I want to start with, we'll talk about the Arsenal game as well, but I want to start with Jose Mourinho because we've been following the backlash to Mourinho giving out about the money, which happened over Christmas, and you might have missed it. Mourinho was bitching about the fact that he didn't have as much money as everybody else, and then the facts came out. Well, the facts were republished and repurposed that proved he's had loads of money. But the Daily Mail yesterday had a story about stuff, maybe the board not liking it. Today they followed that up. This is a Matt Lawton exclusive. A bunch of bullet points here. Mourinho has criticised United spending, seemingly taking aim at the board, and the board have come back out fighting. They're saying there's growing concern that he might leave the club. They say that he has withdrawn more to the inner sanctum of his coaching team. The inner, like he's talking football with his team. The frequency with which he returns to his home in London is causing alarm because, you know, it's like it's practically another country, London and Manchester. It's so far apart. And then there's some brilliant details in the story. Now, look, this is a brilliant story from Matt Lawton, but it's clear that it's the club who are trying to spin back at Mourinho. And we might tell you why this is happening in a minute, but if we can just bring this bit up here. While it would be ridiculous to question the commitment of a manager renowned for his work ethic and his attention to detail, the frequency with which he returns to the family home is causing some alarm. So we're not questioning his work ethic, but he's going home too much. He even went home on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Now, he arranged training so it would be early Christmas Eve and late Christmas Day. And he didn't get a train, he got a plane. But the thing is, he didn't even charge the club for it. He used his own money. Why is this a story?
The game's gone. It's incredible stuff.
Why are the board coming at Jose for flying home to London from Manchester for like 14 hours around Christmas Day?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Lawton does point out that Jose prefers rail travel, so it's not like this is a regular thing. And
he paid for himself.
Yeah, so it's even less of a story as a result of that.
Why did the club care?
Very interesting.
Don't home too much. The reason the club care is because they're in advanced negotiations with Jose for a new contract, according to an exclusive which has just broken in the Telegraph this morning at 8:38 a.m. So you read through this story and it turns out that they're in advanced negotiations which have rapidly progressed over the course of the last month or so. It's despite the fact that the club have their concerns about the fact that maybe he's spending a bit too much time at home. Sam Wallace had that story in the Telegraph as well. It turns out from a while back. So both sides are spinning like mad at the minute, despite the fact that they're desperately trying to lock each other into a longer term deal because he's rolling into the last year of his 3-year deal. Chelsea gave him a massive new contract just before things went horribly awry and he made a lot of money off that. So
that's obviously what Manchester United are doing now, is to lessen the burden on them if things go awry next season, which there's a possibility that they will, although they could go awry this season. As Matt Lawton says, he says one observer, I don't know who the observer is, pointed out that the 30-season syndrome is becoming a second-season syndrome potentially for
United. So they've got their built-in excuses ready if the contract negotiations don't work. But the story from the Telegraph this morning is that the contract negotiations are nearly done.
I'm surprised they're in talks.
I suppose it's good management, really. Like if, say, they were to do something exceedingly well over the course of the rest of the season and Mourinho's entering his last year, Paris Saint-Germain, he's going out in a high, you know, it's not guaranteed that the rest of the season is going to be a failure.
Sure, I suppose you buy real
Likely
estate in the slump in the market, and that's exactly what the United board are doing here with Jose Mourinho, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad of a slump either. It's like a few annoying bits and pieces, 3 draws in a row, and then actually they're back to winning ways, so... So we're going to move on and talk about the Arsenal game last night.
Yeah, incredible stuff. It's just, this Arsenal season, this stuff that's happening at the Emirates this year, it's just wonderful. I've completely banished any sort of anger with Arsenal's competitive tendencies because there are no competitive tendencies. They're going to do nothing this season. And as a lot of people often point out, this is the banter era of Arsenal, and let's just revel in it. And
an alternative reality for you, right? Say Wenger had retired in 2009 or 2010, and this was a new young manager who had the team playing this expressive, beautiful football with like that attacking trio last night, scoring last-minute equalisers and then almost coughing up a winner. We'd be like, wow, this manager's brilliant. We love him. Look at the excitement that he brings to our lives. Because it's Wenger and because he's already reached the heights that Wenger reached early in his career, we judge him against those standards, which, let's face it, may be unfair to judge him against. He's no longer that same manager. The league is not the same league. There's been financial doping for 2 decades at this point, so we should learn to love the latter stage of Arsene Wenger as opposed to letting the Arsenal Fan TV set the agenda on this.
Yeah, I'm coming around to that point of view very, very quickly now, and it helps like we pointed this out with Stuart Robson yesterday, it helps that there isn't an embarrassment in the middle of the season there anywhere. It's probably not going to happen.
No 7-0, no 7-1s.
Do they have to go to the Etihad? I can't remember, was that City match in the Etihad or not? Either way, that could be the one thing that happens. City could hammer them. Actually, we have Liverpool. The Liverpool 4-0, that did happen. So you do have that one embarrassment, but last season there was 4 or 5 embarrassments within 1 year.
Now.
Exactly. So I think let's just learn to enjoy these moments, and maybe one day they'll have a more pragmatic manager who might win a Premier League with Arsenal again. But it's not going to happen with Arsene Wenger, but we're going to have a hell of a lot of nights like this, which are just thoroughly enjoyable. And a lot of Arsenal fans have checked out to the point where they're neutrals now, and they can actually enjoy the madness of it.
Yeah, the quality football. Whereas
Zappa Costa hits the crossbar and you're like, oh God, that would have been class. Wait, I'm an Arsenal fan, what am I doing?
The other point, obviously, is that his paranoia pre-match was actually borne out perfectly, because some people have been in touch on Facebook to say that they thought it was a penalty. I don't think it was a penalty last night.
No.
I've definitely changed my mind on that, having actually looked at it. So Wenger, before the match, was saying we're used to this happening. After the match, he's saying we're used to this happening. I think he can expect a massive ban from the FA for this. Remember, this is now the third incident it's the second in 4 days, or the third in a week, but he also has last season's suspension from the Burnley game. So they put all that together, and suddenly a pattern begins to emerge of Arsene Wenger, slayer of referees.
He's definitely got a wedding coming up or something, because he is 100% getting a stadium ban. There's no question about that. As in, straight up, it's like Jeff Shreve's great game last night. Tonight, Arsene is like, yeah, great game of football, but farcical decision. Go straight on in. Usually the managers need to get coaxed out of their shell a little bit before they start slamming the referee, but he was straight in there. Good game, farcical decision. And it wasn't a farcical decision. I think it was the wrong one, but to call it farcical is a bit much, and it's like he's trying to get himself banned.
I was listening to Joe and Dave McIntyre on the radio last night, and Dave was making the point that Jack Wilshere's resurgence is just in time for him to be built up pre-World Cup, to the point where in the group stages, when England go out, he's the scapegoat.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all, if you could just kind of tap him on the shoulder now and go, just say you don't want to play for England, say you just want to concentrate on your career with Arsenal, it'll be much better for you in the long run, before the effigies get burned and he gets hung from lampposts all around.
Yeah, it's like even this morning in the press, there's the comparisons with Paul Gascoigne popping up once again. I think it's actually Barney Ronay who does it, but he's not doing it in a serious manner. He's like, we've suddenly seen the Jack Wilshere pop up that was once compared to Paul Gascoigne. The interesting tactical tweak by Wenger last night was when Wilshere started on the right of the midfield tree and does well. I thought he had a good first half, forward runs and stuff, but then he sits back a little bit. He's not as noticeable. His impact on the game isn't as noticeable because he's not dribbling with the ball as much, but his passing skills are really on show. He's not getting shown up by Fabregas as much then in the second half.
The goal was great.
Yeah.
Like, in those circumstances, you've seen that happen so often in football, where somebody takes that shot and it's like Rosette, or it goes out for a corner, but like the strike is beautiful, and it's like somebody who's in the moment and somebody who's definitely playing really well. So it's great to see him back. Especially
the fact that that Courtois was in such inspired form last night, made 2 unbelievable saves in the first half. It would have taken something special to beat him, and there were 2 special strikes, no chance of Courtois saving them. Seamus Bannon says, I've only just discovered this live stream the past couple of days. Yesterday I spilled my coffee over myself listening. Let's see what happens today. And a couple of other quick comments from earlier on about the stuff we were talking about. Noel wants to know when the top 50 hurling ranking will be done. Well, it'll have to be top 500 to do hurling justice. We will do a top 10 hurling a little bit later on in the year when we get a bit closer to the league. Mark Corcoran says on Conor Callaghan not having delivered against big teams, which was what Moyles said, scores goals in All-Ireland semi and final. How much bigger do you want? I think you called him on that, in fairness. Yeah. He might have misspoken. A little bit. Is there something in his point that he wasn't great after the goal in the All-Ireland final? I mean, maybe. He's still, You want to see him dominate games to be in the top 10 footballers of the country? Probably, yeah. I think he deserves a spot in the top 10 for sure. Tommy says no. Straight in. Goals in the All-Ireland final, fair enough. Wolves won't be signing Keane. They have more chance of them signing Roy Keane. I mean, I think, Jim Bob, you might be right. But then you think about it, right? And actually, the more I think about it, it's like, here's a club who are going to pay Robbie Keane whatever they're going to pay him, $500,000 for 2 months. Or, like, would it be less than that? Maybe 20 grand a week for 8 weeks. It's only 160 grand. So they pay him 160 grand. They reinvigorate the fact that Robbie Keane is a Wolves player. They have this emotional homecoming for him. The coverage that they get from this... Because what coverage is there going to be of Wolves at the end of the season when they've won the league already? What is it? The 4th of January. They've got the championship wrapped up. They're going to win promotion. But it's just a marketing thing. We put the marketing expense beside that. 160 grand Robbie Keane. You get like extra super bonus points from your sponsors. Happy days. Is there a danger of doing that though, that suddenly Robbie Keane is like, right, I'm such a part of the Wolves legacy now, give me a job. Give me a job in your staff, and Wolves are forced into giving that job despite the fact that he might not be the best candidate.
We say no. Thanks, Robbie. Thanks very much. See you around. Oh, we've got an ambassador's role if you want. Or if he's a brilliant coach, give him...
I'm not saying he's not going to be, but certainly giving it just seems like an unnecessary thing to do for marketing. I think it has to be football related.
Breffney O'Donnell makes the point that Sean O'Brien was a bit more careful with Oisin this time. He definitely was. Was there any more on the Arsenal stuff that you wanted to talk about?
Just Fabregas was unbelievable last night. I think what do we have up on the graphic there a moment ago? Was it a brain in a box or something? A floating brain was how Ronay described Fabregas. I think he used a similar phrase to describe David Silva a couple of weeks ago in the Manchester derby. But he was unbelievable. Wilshere was excellent last night, but then you start to think, how good can Wilshere be? And the hype starts rising, and then you just see some of the passes that Fabregas pings around, and you're like, Wilshere doesn't exactly have that unbelievable level in his locker. That Wilshere, to be a top-level midfielder, will never survive because he's lost that yard of pace, it seems. But Fabregas can survive because he's so unbelievably good, and Conte has welcomed him right back into the fold. And arguably, this is the most impressive section of Cesc Fabregas' career. Like, he's won 2 Premier League titles, isn't it, under 2 different managers.
Wins the World Cup?
Yeah, his club career.
Okay.
I think it is. I just think that he's got this... obviously he loses a little bit of athleticism in his late 20s, but he was never known for that anyway. But especially under Antonio Conte and how they played last season, such a high-octane game, that suddenly Cesc Fabregas is almost indispensable to this team.
I can't hear floating brain and not think of Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, not really. I wouldn't have said it was a compliment, but I guess I understand the point now that he's making.
Yeah, I think he has a big brain and it floats quite nicely.
There is a new documentary out about Mick O'Dwyer, which is coming out next Monday, I think, on RTE.
Yeah, there's a few quotes doing the rounds today. John Fogarty is the piece I'm looking at here in the Examiner. It's called Micko. It's on next Monday at 9:35. And there's a couple of interesting things that have been told to Fogarty here. I think it's just direct quotes from Micko in the documentary. It's about a 4-strand thing. The first strand here is 1982 and how that obviously still rankles with the Kerry person still to this day. But to Micko, it took him extremely hard at the time, which I don't think he's spoken about too much. So he says, a little nudge made history, he said, of Derby's push. Obviously, it was a complete push on Tommy Doyle to claim the ball. If you were well beaten, you'd be happy enough. I mean, we were so close. I was sick. For 2 months after, I never left Waterville. I stayed in the house, put the tape of the game on, and had to look at it just saying to myself, pity we didn't do this, pity we didn't do that. It's like a death in the family, if that's possible. I think of it at least once a week. It would still be implanted in my mind. 36 years later at this point, still implanted in the mind, which is hardly surprising, to be honest.
I know that everybody's going to say that this is the hallmark of the ultra-competitive nature of somebody that turns Mick O'Dwyer into Mick O'Dwyer, and I bet you if you ask Brian Cody, he's got something similar, and I bet you if you ask Alex Ferguson, it's not the 2 Champions League that he wins.
Tommy Walsh in 2010 a couple of weeks ago is kind of the same thing. That seems to be the one he remembers most.
I just feel like at some point, shut up and move on.
Maybe. In terms of the competitive beast that is in Mick O'Dwyer, he talks about his playing career here as well in this piece, and he says, when I played as a forward, I was very accurate. He's not shy about his own talents.
Oh no, he was a sensational footballer, which is the other thing that is forgotten about. Wasn't he the top scorer in league history until last year, the year before?
Is that right? I don't know. But he talks about Pat Spillane here, and he says of the criticism he received from some teammates, he scoffs. The players that played around me told me that I was a very selfish player. Like Pat Spillane, I would tell him, why should I be giving it to ye when I can score myself? And then another great line, he talks about Laois. He talks about Kildare a little bit, saying that the hype got to the players in '98. And then Laois, he insists he was correct not to give in to the players in Laois when they looked for a change in approach. Instead of changing it, I left, he recalls. They got change, it didn't take them any further. They haven't won anything since. And then the final thing then, it's probably, it's sad really. It's something that's definitely going to be the news angle from this documentary next week, just in terms of his health and his speech really, saying it comes and goes. Some days I can't speak at all. And he says, just talking about the end of his time really, I'd like to be on the sideline watching or in the stand and drop dead. That's the way I would like it to happen. It's incredible quotes. I'm looking forward to the documentary and that sort of thing, talking about how he would like death's door to be opened is incredible, really.
That's out next week. Okay, so one final point that we need to clear up. Apparently this came up on the news round on Off the Ball last night. We did bring you the big crappy quiz of the year around Christmas time. Nathan and the wreck of the human being, the shell of a man that was Kevin Kilbane, that day actually won the quiz, despite the fact Kev arrived in like halfway through. Apparently, though, they shouldn't have been the rightful winners, as the lads heard on last night's news round.
And then correction 2, this is maybe more contentious.
Okay.
Had not seen this before.
Right.
Guys, full stop. I've just listened back to the Christmas special crappy quiz final round 3 times. Wow. It's been a long Christmas. Wow. Guys, I've just listened back to the Christmas special crappy quiz final round 3 times, and I've done the maths. Dave and Adrian won. I just thought they'd like to know.
Really?
Garrett.
That has thrown the cat amongst the pigeons now, because it ruined my Christmas. I had a feeling, well, now we did get to it in a point. I think we turned around a 4 or 5 point deficit, and then at the end of the quiz I was told we'd lost by a point, which I kind of just shrugged my shoulders and thought it's a gallant morale boosting defeat.
Have you sent this in yourself to try and tackle this on air day?
But if he's listened to it 3 times,
that's the thing.
You should get some friends.
Well, there's that too, but
there's going to have to be an on-air dealing with this situation. This has to come out, and there has to be, I think we need a public inquiry.
But the team event doesn't get rectified until possibly next year.
No, but it's like, an Irish athlete getting the bronze medal for an Olympic Games 20 years ago. It won't be the same, but it'll still merit something.
Still get your parade.
Yeah, they can have a parade if they want, but I mean, it's your fault. I'm deciding, right, I was going to defend that and go, no, the final decision, what happens in the real play. But actually, you know what? We've seen results overchanged. Defend yourself.
Well, obviously we take allegations like this incredibly seriously in the crappy quiz, and there is a crappy quiz committee currently sitting in session to try and, if there needs to be a wrong righted, it will be righted. But
the Ombudsman will have a say. Will
absolutely. All I can say is that we do take these allegations very seriously, and we will not allow it to tarnish the legacy of the crappy quiz, because we do not know if any of this is actually based on fact.
My responsibility probably stems from the fact that I didn't get them all to shut up enough, and so maybe the person monitoring that doesn't realise you get deducted a point every time you get one wrong in the rapid fire.
I would presume they do. I don't know. If you've listened to it 3 times, I would like to think that you would have done your homework and listened to the preceding thing where Joe actually explains it. So if you haven't actually listened to it properly, you don't know the rules, then screw you, quite frankly.
All right, that's pretty much all we've got time for. On today's show, we'll try and rectify that for you. The match live tonight.
It's Spurs versus West Ham.
Spurs versus West Ham, and it's Nathan and Kenny Cunningham on commentary duty for you for that one. We'll be back on tomorrow morning. The barriometer makes its long-awaited return. If you have any complaints about that, you can send them to nobody. Well, maybe Adrian. Adrian's email address is the one we should be giving out for that one. And then on Friday evening, Keith Wood is going to preview the weekend's rugby, and we'll also have the return of the crappy quiz proper this year. And maybe we're going to steal a good idea for that rapid fire round, because actually it worked really well. And I think Owen did great work on the crappy quiz, and I don't think his bona fide should be called into question anymore.
Thank you.
On that note, see you tomorrow.